that come to mind, and this is this. I mean, you know about this lady that she's angry just as quickly as you know that her hair is dark, and it's interesting to dwell a bit about this. This is not something, the judgment that she's angry or the impression that she's angry doesn't feel like something you did. It feels like something that happens. It happens to you. We have the basic experience is a passive experience in those judgments. And that is true of perception. When we see the world, we don't decide to see it. It is true of impressions, and it is true in general, what we call intuitive thinking. It just happens. It comes from somewhere, and we are not the author of it. Now, there is another way that thoughts come to mind, and I mean, here I suppose essentially nothing came to your mind, but the answer is 408. To produce the 408 requires a completely different kind of operation. You have to retrieve a program that you learn in school. The program consists of steps. You have to go through the steps. You've got to pay attention successively to partial products and so on, and keep things in mind and keep the whole program in mind. And this is hard work. This is something that you do. It is not something that happens to you. And there are many indications that this is hard work. One is that physiology indicates that this is hard work. The pupil dilates. This is something that I studied many, many years ago. The pupil really, on a program like that, if you're on a problem like that, if you're going to do it in your head, your pupil will dilate. The area will increase by about 50% as soon as you engage in that, and it will stay dilated as long as you're working, and it will sort of collapse back to normal size, either when you quit or when you find the answer. So this is another way thoughts come to mind, and this is definitely not the intuitive way. Here we feel a sense of agency, we feel something deliberate is happening, and a very important aspect of it, this is effortful, and what psychologists mean by effort is basically, if you want a quick introduction to what effort is, this is something you cannot do while making a left turn into traffic. You cannot do it, and you shouldn't try. And the reason is that there is limited capacity to exert effort. And if you're engage that capacity or those resources in one task, less is available for another task. Now, there is another function of System 2, and here I'm going to tell you a riddle. Most of you are familiar with it. A bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. And of course, how much does the ball cost? How many people know this riddle, by the way? Oh, okay, so it's still usable. The point about this riddle is that the number came to your mind. And the number is 10 cents. And everybody, just, I think, maybe here, maybe there are exceptions, very few exceptions. People confess that the number 10 cents immediately came to mind. Now, it's wrong. I mean, 10 cents and $1.10 is $1.20, so that's not the solution. The solution is 5 cents. But what is interesting here is that at Princeton, at MIT, at Harvard, and I don't know about Stanford or Caltech, but about 50% of students asked this question of undergraduates say 10 cents. And we learned something very interesting when somebody says 10 cents. We learned that they didn't check. Because if they had checked, they wouldn't say 10 cents. So there is a sense of confidence that people have, that these people in particular have. And it brings us to another function of what I'll call System 2. System 1 is the intuitive one. It performed those automatic and activities, and System 2 is the effortful one, the one that's the deliberate one. And the reason that I classify this as a System 2 operation is that self-control and controlling your attention and deliberate exertion of effort are impaired when by other activities. So if, for example, to give you a trivial example, If somebody is asked to retain 7 digits in their head and is then given a choice between chocolate cake, sinful chocolate cake, and virtuous fruit salad, they are more likely to choose the chocolate cake than they would if they were asked without 7 digits in their head. It takes some effort to control your impulses, even such mild impulses as a preference for chocolate. So, you should be aware of that difference between System 1 operations, the automatic ones, and System 2 operations, the deliberate ones. It comes very clearly when in driving. So driving is a skill, and any skilled activity, a measure of skill, is that things begin to happen automatically. So you can drive and conduct a conversation. You cannot make a left turn into traffic, but by and large, we can drive and talk. So driving is largely automatic. Braking, when there is any sign of danger, braking is completely automatic. That is, you can notice why you are braking, but you first respond, so that the response is immediate, it is fully automatic. Now, in some places, not here, where people drive in snow or ice, they learn about skids. And then occasionally, you'll find yourself as a driver in a skid, and then System 2 will be mobilized, because in a skid, you're not supposed to do anything that comes naturally to you. You shouldn't brake, and you shouldn't steer away from the skid. You should leave the brakes alone and steer into the skid. Completely non-intuitive. Now, when people have a lot of practice with skids, that too becomes automatic. So one thing that we can tell about System 1 and System 2, those two types of operations, is some of the basic innate operations, functions that we have, such as perceiving things, having emotional reactions to things. All this is System 1. We don't choose to do it, it just happens to us. But also, System 1 is where skill is. That is, when we get to be skilled at something, it becomes automatic and it demands fewer resources, and we get to be very good at it.